Welcome to Seize the Mains by Malhotra's IS Academy. I am Sv Fcra and I am taking this daily answer writing initiative from Monday to Friday at 9 pm. This initiative will go on for 90 days at least and we'll stop only for prelims break for 30 days. If you are new, you can download the schedule for first 30 days, that is till March 17, from the description below. And don't worry about making notes, as the PDF of this presentation of this lecture will be available in the link in the description below. So without any further ado, let's get started. According to our schedule, the one in the description, today is day 14 of our discussion and the topic for today is from GS paper 2. It is Development and Development Processes, the role of non-governmental organizations, NGOs and self-help groups, SHGs. The next slide will display the question. As usual, I recommend that you keep a pen and a paper close to you, and as I display the question, you should pause the video and note down the points, all the facts that come to your mind. You should create a structure of your own answer and then start the video again to learn how to structure this answer. So let me display the question. The question for today is, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which is FCRA, stifles the independent functioning of NGOs. Discuss and answer this question in 250 words, and this question will fetch you 15 marks. Now, FCRA in general, FCRA regulates the foreign funding of entities in India. In this question, we have to discuss how FCRA regulates NGOs and does it stifle their growth. The directive here is discuss, which means that we have to present both sides of the argument. One side would say that yes, it does stifle the growth of NGOs in India, and the other side would say that why provisions of FCRA are needed and why better regulation through FCRA is needed and foreign funding needs to be checked upon. So this is a very simple question. You can read about FCRA a little bit in detail, a little history of it, because this question is very much expected. NGOs are the favorite part of UPSC, any form of civil society. So they're favorite parts of UPSC, they're favorite areas of UPSC, and this amendments to FCRA have been very much regular. The Supreme Court says one thing, the central government, the Home Ministry comes out with another thing. So these are always in news. So questions like these which concern FCRA and NGOs are very important from examination point of view for UPSC and State Civil Services mains. So let's see how can we build our answer around this. As usual, we'll start by writing an introduction. In the introduction for this answer, we'll talk broadly about the role of NGOs, why they are important in a democracy like India, in a society like India, and then we'll also discuss what are the provisions of FCRA which regulate the functioning of NGOs. That would be our introduction for this question. Let's see how can we start with this. Now here in the first paragraph, we talk about what are NGOs and what is their broad function. NGOs are voluntary organizations that work towards a social cause and social justice. Make sure you underline these terms as keywords because the examiner will never be able to read full sentences in your answer. He'll just check the facts of the answer are complete and appropriate. So just underline whatever you find important. With the support given by the government, NGOs have been accelerating their development activities by taking up specific issues like poverty alleviation, casteism and discrimination, women rights, child labor, rural development, environmental issues, etc. So here we have broadly defined what an NGO is in the first line and we've talked about their role in the second line. Our question also talks about FCRA. So let's see how we can give an introduction to FCRA. The Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 2010 and rules framed under it, the FCRA or Act, regulate the receipt and usage of foreign contribution by NGOs in India. It is implemented by the Ministry of Home Affairs. The intent of the act is to prevent use of foreign contribution or foreign hospitality for any activity detrimental to the national interest. So why would any country not like foreign funding? We all like foreign funding, but that foreign funding, where does it come from and where it goes, that is an area of concern for us. That is why FCRA has been put in place. And NGOs are very free organizations. They don't have tax liabilities. They can employ people as many as they want from any area of, or they don't have any strict regulations around them. NGOs in India. So FCRA has been tweaked from time to time to check on the foreign funding they have been getting, to regulate the source of funding and where they use these funds for, whatever purpose these funds are serving. So this second paragraph of yours, it talks about FCRA in general, the ministry which regulates it, and why is FCRA used for regulation of foreign funding of NGOs. So this introduction, this gives a conversation, a starting conversation to the examiner, which talks about the importance of the things which have been talked about in the question. So make sure that you create your own specific introductions around such questions. Moving on to the linkage points, we'll talk about the provisions of FCRA which are being talked about in this question. There have been recent amendments to FCRA. There have been many judgments related to FCRA. There have been many provisions in the FCRA in the first place which are not liked by the civil society or human rights activists. So broadly, you will have to talk about what are the provisions of FCRA. So let's move on and learn what are the provisions of FCRA. These provisions will serve as our linkage points for the day. After talking about these provisions, we'll move on to write about the positive and negative sides of this regulation. So let's see what are the linkage points for the day. Broadly, the FCRA requires every person or NGO wishing to receive foreign donations to be registered under the Act. Like if somebody wants to get foreign funding, they need to be registered. That's the first thing. To open a bank account in SBI Delhi. India is a vast country, but for foreign funding of NGOs need to have a bank account only in SBI Delhi. So here NGOs revolt on the basis of geographical issues, especially during the pandemic, during the lockdown, when foreign funding was very much necessary. They could not go and open their new bank accounts in Delhi. So because mobility was an issue. So this is the second thing. To utilize whatever the funds they have received only for the purpose for which they have been received and as stipulated in the Act. So if the NGOs say that we want to build a new building or a shelter home, they can use those specific funds only to build that shelter home and not for any other purpose. They cannot devolve funds for any other activities. So here is a strict regulation which comes under FCRA. The fourth one is to file annual returns. This is very much genuine. Filing annual returns and showing where their expenditures have gone, how many people have been employed. So these were the broad details of FCRA and in regards to NGOs that are working in India. So here we end with our introduction and linkage points. Since the question asks us to discuss that how FCRA affects the foreign funding of NGOs and the functioning of NGOs in general. So now we need to take the positive sides of the argument and the negative sides of the argument. We'll start by talking about what is the need of FCRA in regulating foreign funding of NGOs. Why is FCRA even needed? So most of the issues that were arising out of foreign funding were either strategic, or they concerned our internal security or the international image of India. That NGOs were used as tools by foreign agencies. Many capitalist houses, many international governments, many international intelligence agencies used for NGOs in India as tools to devolve funds for the activities they wanted to conduct in India for their particular interest. So altruism behind any kind of foreign donation was not seen. That's why strict curbs have been put in place. All NGOs have been put under check. So let's discuss what were the needs of these regulations. See, the first point here talks about that the foreign funding has been used to fuel protest. If you are an old aspirant, or if you have heard about the Kunnankulam nuclear power project in Tamil Nadu, there were years of protest one after the other around this project, and later on it was realized that due to strained relations of India and USA, some agencies in USA were the key players behind these protests. So it was not just the people, they were brainwashed into protesting against this nuclear project. So this is one of the things. Let me read this out for you. Not many countries can be termed as altruistic donors or observers to India when it comes to geopolitics. So altruistic is that without any selfish interest. Somebody is giving something to you without any selfish interest. Why would a developed country in such a competitive geopolitical time would want another country to grow? So why would, there is always a competition, there is always a sense of competition. So whenever India tries to grow through these projects, there are many protests that are being carried out. Some are very genuine, the others are motivated by interest of other countries. They are the foreign funding is received, international money is received, and that is what keeps these protests going on for so long time. It sustains these projects. So this is a very good example, the Kunnankulam nuclear project site. Whenever you talk about NGOs and foreign funding, make sure that you use this example, because this is one of the most important examples in this topic. So hence, donations to NGOs for a particular cause could have different motives. They could be strategic or economic. Strategic with regards to relations between two countries, or economic. Some country would want India not to develop the latest type of technology on its own soil. So it could be fueled by any rival country. Strategic or economic, or even a company could give foreign funding to a certain kind of NGO to motivate people to protest against a certain development. So example is of the Kunnankulam nuclear project site. Go through this. And the second one is that there are many NGOs which are involved in violation of Fcra, the act itself. There are many NGOs which use this foreign funding and as a means to violate Fcra. See, you all are aware of INDC's intended nationally determined contributions of India according to Paris Climate Deal. So according to that, India is doing a great job. India is doing a great job in its own capacity. We are switching to electric vehicles. We have shifted to LEDs. We have launched so many schemes regarding solar energy. So we are well on time and we are better than most of the developed countries. But there are many international NGOs or even domestic NGOs which receive foreign funding, which oppose even basic development activities by the Indian government. They launch protest, or they just launch they block the roads, or they just block development activities in the name of climate change. So the countries which should be addressing climate change right now, which are in a very developed state and very much powerful and rich to address climate change, they fuel protest in India. For example, several pro-climate NGOs are focusing on advocacy against coal in the media. Have you ever noticed that the international rankings that you read about in your UPSC preparation, they are mostly anti-India, especially when it comes to environmental rankings, that India is not doing good environmentally, India is forcing climate change and things like that. Where does this all come from? It comes from here. They create a negative image of India on the international front, and it becomes very difficult for government to launch even basic developmental projects which can benefit the people as a whole. So this is the second point here. Several pro-climate NGOs are focusing on advocacy against coal in the media, forcing the government to bring down development activities through protest. India's record in complying with the Paris Agreement. Global pressures are intensifying on India to raise the NDCs. It is detrimental to the Indian image. And poverty reduction plans. And poverty reduction plans are need of the hour for India. We need developmental plans. We need new technologies. So these were the 2 points here. Let's move on to the next one and discuss that why FCRA is needed. The third concern is that the NGOs which are working on Indian soil are sending wrong data or biased data. They don't look at the developed countries, but when it comes to India, they send a very wrong data or statistics. So there was this global slavery index where India ranked very low, and ILO said that modern slavery is very much prevalent, that there is a modern kind of slavery that is prevalent in India, and also that the country has the highest number of people under forced labor, due to which the rank of India was very bad, and the international image deteriorated. People feel afraid about India. People don't know what's happening on the ground. So even we as aspirants, we get a very negative image of our own country. So MHA, Ministry of Home Affairs, was apprehensive that where is this data coming from? It is these NGOs which are working in India who are researching here and sending this biased data. And where are they getting funding from? They are getting funding from foreign sources. So, you know, brain drain, that so many intelligent youth which are leaving India and moving to developed countries, struggling there, settling their lives there. These indices are one of the causes for brain drain as well, because when you have a very negative picture of your own country, of your own homeland, you try to find a refuge for yourself, and that's why people migrate. That okay, that maybe we are not happy, and that destination addiction, that becomes very prevalent. That maybe there is some developed country where I'll be happier, where I'll be very much regarded and respected, because ILO rankings for India are very low, very bad. So that's how the image works badly. That's how when these NGOs through their foreign funding use it against India, that's how it hampers the image of India. The fourth concern here is about internal security. See, there are many NGOs registered with very good looking names, and their names and their profiles appear that they're working for very good social causes, but at the back end they are actually supporting Maoist interests. So they're supporting left-wing extremism and targeting these NGOs. Stopping the funding for these NGOs from foreign sources is very much important. It's the need of the hour. The fifth is you can make this as a separate point, or whatever comes to your mind, you can term it as other issues. So there is money laundering that happens. People donate to NGOs to just evade taxes. They have Binami properties. They have properties registered in other countries, and they use these NGOs to save their funds, to deposit their funds with NGOs. So these are shreds of evidence of money laundering, subversive activities. Drugs could be one of them, and human trafficking. You know, if you read the newspaper, especially the local newspaper regularly, there are so many incidences that so and so IS officer has found a drug racket going on, or a human trafficking racket going on. So where does this money come from? It comes through these routes. It comes through the routes of foreign funding through NGOs. So that's why they are a cause of concern. And violation of other general laws. So these were the 5 broad areas, 5 broad reasons why regulation through FCRA is very much necessary. You can add your own points, you can increase the number of points, and you could decrease, you could compress the number of words used in these points. So these are the 5 broad points. Make sure you add yours, and even if you cannot add your points, I always recommend that you should add your own examples. Wherever, in whichever part of the country you are staying, I'm sure that there must be many local examples that you must have read in the local newspaper, or many national level examples. So add as many examples as you can. This content which we discuss here, this will remain the same for all aspirants. This, positives and negatives for any topic, they remain the same. But what gets you more marks in mains is the kind of examples you use, the facts you put in, the number of acts or policies that you put in there, the names that you use. So make sure that you do that when you're writing your own answer. Getting back to the answer, let's move on the negative side, the criticism of regulations of FCRA. So talking about the criticism, you just need to talk about what would happen if NGOs did not exist in India. So as we know that there are many gaps in the functioning of government policies and government schemes, and this civil society, these NGOs step in to fill those gaps. They help improve our social setup. They work for the society, they work for social welfare, and they receive a major chunk of their funds from the foreign sources. So when the regulation increases on these foreign sources, some NGOs cannot even carry out their basic functions, and the people who are dependent on these basic functions, they suffer at large. So the first one talks about non-achievement of sustainable development goals and foreign aid or donations. The donations to NGOs form a significant chunk of funds for social work which will not be available once they flee. The second one is killing of entire social sector. So over-regulation is the evil that kills almost every industry, we know that, and FCRA has been condemned for over-regulation many times, especially by human rights activists, as we talked. The regulation should not hamper sharing of resources across national boundaries, essential to the functioning of a global community. So they say that there should be freedom of receiving foreign funding, and this development should flow across boundaries and should not be discouraged unless there is a reason to believe that the funds are being used to aid activities. So we need to take a case-to-case basis approach. Not all NGOs can be banned, or not the licenses of not all the NGOs can be cancelled or not, or just revoked on the basis that some XYZ NGO with the same name or similar functions carried out illegal activities. Our regulation should not exceed the normal bounds of normal regulation. So we should keep in mind that NGOs play a very positive role in our development activities also, and we need them to sustain in India for our sustainable development goals to be achieved and for the broad social welfare. So these were the two criticisms. Let's move on to the next ones. The other criticism is that it is incompatible with international laws. How is it incompatible? Let's read about the UNHRC resolution. United Nations Human Rights Council resolution on protecting human rights says that no law should criminalize or delegitimize activities in defense of human rights on account of the origin of funding. So if there is some funding coming for protection of human rights to India, according to this resolution, India cannot ban it or delegitimize it. So this is how it is incompatible with international laws. Next comes the point that it is unconstitutional. It is a violation of Article 19 Part 1 of the Constitution, as it violates constitutional provisions to respect and protect the rights of freedom of association, expression, freedom of assembly. So it is incompatible with international laws, and it is also unconstitutional. See, while talking about criticism, you can have as many criticisms as you want. There are many types of thinkers who would call it unconstitutional or incompatible. You have to choose your own points, that if you're writing the positive side of argument more, you don't have to write there that this provision is unconstitutional. Many laws, many acts can be unconstitutional in a way, and in the coming times, maybe when you're writing mains, the Supreme Court will come out with a decision that yes, this is unconstitutional, but it is up to you to decide that which points you choose to write in your paper and which points you choose to avoid. So the last one is about employment and the basic livelihood. Employment of the people who work for these NGOs, their livelihood gets affected, and the people who are benefited out of these NGOs, their basic needs are not being met, because if the NGO doesn't function in a specific community which hasn't been covered properly by the government schemes, if that area is very poor, what about the livelihood of those people? Basic things like food, shelter, education, who supports that? Healthcare, who does that? In the COVID-19 pandemic also, there were so many NGOs which were working on the ground level who were supporting government in vaccination, in providing basic food on a daily basis to everyone, especially when there was a lockdown. So when these NGOs stop functioning, when their licenses are not renewed or their funding is stopped, how do they function, and how do we cater to the needs of those people of the society who were being benefited and there is no one else for them to fill that gap? So that's a question that we should be asking. Now we have discussed both the parts of the argument, and now we'll move on to the conclusion. In a discuss kind of conclusion, you don't have to take a stand all the time unless it is a very black and white situation. This situation is a kind of confusing one, that okay, we want FCRA, and on the other hand we don't want it to be over regulating NGOs. So this is about maintaining a balance between regulation and over regulation. So when there is a discuss question asked in the paper, you have to give a balanced conclusion. You don't have to take a stand if it's not very black and white situation. So let's see what is the conclusion for today. Civil society is one of the most important institutions of democracy. See, we have legal institutions like legislature, executive and judiciary. Media and civil society are the other pillars of democracy, and they are very important in the functioning of democracy. No democracy can function without civil society. However, the government of any country has the right to ask genuine questions around the genuineness of a protest, the objective of money received, is it legal or is it being laundered? So this is about that yes, FCRA is needed. We are just putting it into a different form. We are putting it from the side of the government. And here we have shared some data about the NGOs working on ground in India. Let's see what is this. Until 2011, there were more than 40,000 NGOs registered under FCRA in India. That number now stands at only 16,000. So that's a very grim reality. And that's actual data. It has been published in newspapers, and we've seen it from Ministry of Home also. So that's actual data, and this fall has been very steep. So many NGOs are doing humane service. NGOs are helpful in implementing government schemes at the grassroots. They fill the gaps where the government fails to do their jobs. We need to draw a distinction between the ones with other motives and the ones which benefit our society. So this conclusion includes a lot of data, a lot of statistics. It also talks about why FCRA is needed by the government and why NGOs are needed. It talks about creating a balance, creating a distinction between the NGOs with ulterior motives and the NGOs which actually benefit our society and are very crucial for the functioning of our democracy. So this is a balanced conclusion. Go through the answer once again. Download the PDF for this presentation from the description below. Go through the answer at least twice and see that what points have been added and for what reason at what part of the answer. Write your own answers. We are constantly evaluating and sharing our feedback with you. Share your answers by 12 PM tomorrow. That is 12 PM of February 26th. This initiative runs from Monday to Friday, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, we could not have a class on Tuesday. That was February 23. This initiative runs from Monday to Friday, but due to some unavoidable circumstances, we could not have a class on Wednesday. That was February 23, and the topic was from GS Paper 4 Ethics. So that lecture will be taken tomorrow at 9 PM on Saturday. We'll make up for what we missed out during the weekdays. So make sure that you stay tuned, keep sharing your answers, keep following our channel, and we are always there to help aspirants who follow us, and all the best for your preparation. Keep working hard.